Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to Pick Six with David Bearman. I am Josh Katzker from DolphinsTalk.com and the Same Old Dolphin Show. Joining me today, as always, is Deputy Editor, Sports Betting for ESPN.com, lifelong Miami Dolphin fan, and a longtime friend, Pembroke Pines, Florida's own David Bearman. David, how are you?
Good, Josh. Happy to be back with you live on air here on a nice Friday night. And October's here. It's a little chilly outside, at least where I live in Connecticut.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure down in Florida it's still swampy and nice and humid and lovely and outside and hanging out. But, we're
It's
here.
everything bad in the world is happening in Florida right now.
Yeah. But, yeah, happy to be here. I, got to go out to Vegas to see the Dolphins play last week, which – as you know, I love going on road games. That was my 37th road game that I've been to since I left the friendly confines of South Florida to go to school in Gainesville, and that started that year. I went to Tampa I actually went to the Citrus Bowl to see Miami play Tampa in a preseason game on my way to Gainesville to do one of those. You're scouting the school, see where you're going to go. So that was my first road game, and here we are 25 years later, and I went to my 37th one. Making up for last year's canceled trip to Vegas due to COVID. Got to out there see the brand new stadium, and unfortunately we didn't get a win, but good time had by all.
Hey, you got to fulfill the lifelong dream of traveling across the country to watch Jacoby Brissett play quarterback.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was touting.
You can't complain about that.
When I planned this trip many months, if not years ago, it was lifelong dream to see Jacoby Brissett do absolutely nothing for 3 quarters.
There you go.
Had a good fourth quarter, gave us a little I look at that Dolphin game. I know we're going to get more into it in a minute. It's like when you have a bad golf round, but you par the last hole.
Yeah.
I can do this. I can come back for more. I'll go play next week. That's what the Dolphin game was last week. It was a bad golf. You parred the first hole, maybe even birdied the first hole. You had a terrible in the middle, and then you know what? I'm going to give you a par of the last 2 holes to get you back. That's what the Dolphins did.
Yeah, it was just a lot of just garbage for the longest time in that game before they finally turned it around at the end. And, look, my brother and I, we do the show, the Same Old Dolphin Show. And we talked about how that we've watched that exact Dolphin game. I don't know how many times over the years where the Dolphins, offense just couldn't do anything, was just completely inept. And, the defense did just enough to keep them in the game and just in time for the offense to finally turn it on and do something. And then the defense is completely gassed from doing all the work all day. And, and then the Dolphins drop the game. And that's just kind of how it goes. It was a very sort of same old Dolphins kind of game. But, other than the game, which was kind of a lousy part of your weekend, that trip to Vegas was pretty fruitful for you.
It was pretty fruitful, and I didn't get to come live on the show, but I know I sent you the video of my picks that my cousin Jacob took while we were at our Park MGM hotel, and lo and behold, I swept the slate. I went undefeated. Those are once-in-a-lifetime weekends that you have where you're in Vegas, you're betting half your stuff at a book and half your stuff elsewhere, and you go, it's midway through the 1:00 games. You're like, oh, these are all working out. When's the hammer going to drop? And then I even said to my cousin, we were actually at the stadium by then, sitting in our seats when the 1:00 games were ending, watching on my phone, a little YouTube TV. And I'm like, something's going to happen here late in the fourth quarter because I'm winning every freaking game. And that just doesn't happen. But no, they all won. And then I had a big parlay that I turned to my cousin. And I said, hey, Cleveland's winning big. Detroit's holding on right now. I didn't know they were going to lose to a 66-yard field goal, but they covered. The third leg of my big weekend parlay is the Dolphins plus 3.5. I should probably lay it off since we're sitting here at the stadium. And that's the game that's going to ruin your perfect weekend.
Yeah.
And they jump out to a 14-0 lead, and it's like, okay, I'm going to hit this parlay. And then they were down 22-14, and you're like, all right, well, here we go. Somehow Jacoby brought him down the field, scored. Had they missed the 2, you cover. If they make the 2, you go to overtime and field goal, whatever. And you're like, if you're going to lose by 3. And those last 4 or 5 plays where you had Carr and Gruden going back and forth trying to decide what the hell they were going to do for a chip shot field goal, I'm like, they're going to score a touchdown here and screw everybody over. And this was the type of game that if you're really into betting, live betting, etc., there were so many opportunities that you could almost guarantee yourself money if you did it the right way. If you bet on the Dolphins, it's 14-0. You can then come back and get a good line on the Raiders, who then took the lead, and come back and get a good line on the Dolphins. There were a lot of middles to be had when you have a 14-0 lead and then you're down 8 and then you're tied. And I had a buddy that was a section over who kept texting me all along the way what he was doing. And he wound up winning every bet because he had the Dolphins, then he had the Raiders, then he had the Dolphins, and he won them all. So, but I can tell you the stadium's awesome. It's big. It's huge. It's not as big as Jerry World, which me and your other friend, my brother Daniel, got to go to on Thanksgiving Day many, many moons ago. One of our bucket list items was see the Dolphins play on Thanksgiving Day in Dallas. And we did it at Jerry World and did what we do best and, paid for tickets in the last row of the upper deck and wound up sitting 4 rows from the field. Good times had by all.
That is a classic Bearman move. You guys have no idea. That is that is a move that has been going on since like the late 80s at least, like probably since they opened Joe Robbie Stadium.
Probably since they opened the Miami Arena and we had season tickets in the upper deck for the Heat. And we wound up sitting on the court next to Madonna and Sylvester Stallone every single night.
Yeah. So even earlier.
Start schmoozing with the ushers and get to know them on first name basis. They don't even check your tickets anymore. But that one in Dallas was epic because we got there when the gates opened just to see the stadium. We were walking around. Nobody was paying attention. We got into the lower areas. We actually got into the lower area. And it was Thanksgiving Day and there was nobody there. It was like 20,000 people. We were sitting right there, and I asked the guy behind me at one point, what do these tickets cost? And he goes, well, face is $600 per, but that doesn't include the $20K you got to play in the PSL. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, my $150 ticket doesn't look so bad down here. But yeah, the Allegiant Stadium is nice, brand new, very clean. It's kind of weird being in a stadium and seeing the Vegas Strip right out your window.
Yeah.
But easily accessible. You can walk right there from the hotels, and they got a good situation down there. It's going to be interesting to see how the Raiders do and what progresses of that franchise. Because I could tell people around me mostly were from LA and Oakland. Raider fans coming to see their team second game with fans. But Las Vegas has a team now, so we'll see what happens.
They do have a team now, and they have a team that's sitting there 3-0, 2 games up on the defending AFC champions. So
and not to give anything away, but we'll be fading the Raiders in one of our pick sixes later tonight.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the Raiders here in a minute, but I'm glad you enjoyed your trip to Vegas. I'm glad it was so fruitful for you, and that you did well. And now you've come back to the East Coast, and your reward is you get to see the Miami Dolphins host the 0-3 Indianapolis Colts. And this is where we dive into the player props, and we usually start out with the opposing quarterback, and we can't do that because Carson Wentz and his 2 bum ankles, the maximum number of sprained ankles that a person could have, and he's questionable for the game on Sunday. So because of that, there's not even numbers out there that you can bet on.
Believe it or not, I think Carson Wentz can actually probably sprain more than 2 ankles. That's just me. If anybody can do it, Carson can do it. If you're an avid player of player props, don't expect to see many Carson Wentz props ever. Like, the guy is just going to be questionable every game for the rest of his career. That's what he does. And hopefully he's fine moving forward after this week. And I mean, whether it's Carson Wentz or Jacob Eason, I'm not real concerned. That's not my issue with the Miami Dolphins right now. Right now, my issue is their offense, which we'll dive into. And I think, they didn't play the best defensive game in the world versus the Raiders, although they did stop them, pick 6 and a 4th down play that I'll still never understand why the Raiders ran it. But the defense gave him a 14-0 lead, and the offense didn't really do anything with it. So I'm not really concerned whether it's Carson Wentz, Jacob Eason, or Josh Katzker. Either way, I think the Dolphins will be fine on defense. I'm more concerned of whether they can score. So,
yeah, that is going to be the question in this one for sure. But let's start with some Colts guys on offense, because if there's going to be a couple of players that the Dolphins are going to have to worry about on the defensive side of the football when the Colts are on offense, it's these 2 guys right here. It's Jonathan Taylor. It's Nyheim Hines. These are the guys. These are the weapons out of the backfield. Jonathan Taylor seems to be on the verge of something big, having his first big game of the season. Over under for Taylor is 73.5 rush yards, 12.5 receiving yards, and 15.5 attempts. The over-under on Hines is 25.5 rush yards and 3.5 receptions. For some reason, they didn't have a prop out there for receiving yards for Hines. That's where he tends to be the most dangerous as opposed to running the ball out of the backfield. But how do you feel about these guys, these two weapons that the Colts have in the backfield and who are likely going to be the only guys rushing the ball, as Marlon Mack, of course, is now rumored to be on the trading block?
I mean, if you've been watching the Dolphins' first 3 games or any of last year, you know that the weakness has been stopping the run, and that hasn't changed this year. You saw Game 1, New England ran the ball well, and then you saw what Buffalo was able to do. And, of course, anytime Peyton Barber goes for 135 yards, you know there's a problem. So I'm going to be taking the over with Jonathan Taylor's rushing yards, probably going to be close to another 100-yard day. And as you've seen, the Dolphins have given it up in chunks. You saw a New England running back at a 35-yard run on the first play of the game. You saw what happened in Buffalo. And again, Peyton Barber had over 100. So Taylor's going to hit his 74, 75 yards, may even come close to 100. It's what can the Dolphins limit him at? I don't see him getting much in terms of the receiving and the passing game. That's where Hines is going to come in. Hines over the total 3.5. He'll probably have 4 or 5 catches because as the teams continue to run on the Dolphins, what opens up is, the running backs out of the backfield. And that's where Barber, again, the guy had 150 total yards last week. If you take that and you split it between Taylor and Hines, you're going to hit the over on both of them, rushing for Taylor and receiving on Hines.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, again, with Wentz's inability to sort of move around too much in the pocket, if he's the guy that ends up starting. Listen, if it ends up being Eason, all bets are off. I no idea what to expect in that case. But Wentz is not going to have a whole lot of time, not going to have that ability to sort of scramble. And I expect the Dolphins to be bringing a lot of pressure here. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see a lot of dump offs to a guy like Nyheim Hines out of the backfield. But let's take a look at the receivers for the Colts. Micah Pittman Jr., over under 47.5 receiving yards, 3.5 receptions. Zach Pascal, 36.5 receiving yards, 2.5 receptions, and Paris Campbell, 20.5 receiving yards, 1.5 receptions. Pittman clearly seems to be the number one guy on this receiving core in the absence of T.Y. Hilton, with Pascal being a pretty good red zone threat for the Colts. And then Paris Campbell is just a young guy with some speed who is just there and available, but he's certainly not one of the primary targets for this offense.
Yeah, and this is where you identify the issues of the Colts 0-3 start, is the fact that they really don't have a standout wide receiver for their quarterbacks to throw to. And a lot of what happens here is going to depend on who the quarterback is, whether it's Wentz or whether it's Eason. We've seen in the NFL that certain quarterbacks like certain guys. So we'll see also who the Dolphins put Xavier Howard on. And really, that's going to make a difference here. I see Howard probably shadowing over Pittman, so I'll kind of lower my expectations on him. But one of these guys is going to hit the over because they're all not going to hit the under. If that does, that means the Dolphins have done something right. If I had to pick one guy, it would probably Pascal because he is that red zone guy. And so if they keep going him in the red zone, he should be able to hit his 3 catches and over 36.5 yards. If Howard's not on Pittman, Pittman's going to be the guy that's going to get 70 or 80 yards, but I expect him to be shadowed by him. So I'll go ahead and take Pascal overs and I'll downgrade Pittman a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm playing Pittman in a fantasy league this year. This week rather. He's going out there for me, having with T. Higgins on the shelf. Pittman's kind of next man up for me in a PPR league, but I like his value in a PPR league. He's getting targeted a lot, so from that perspective, I like it, and I'm hoping that that he's not draped by Xavier Howard the whole day. Well, let's take a look at what it looks like when the Dolphins have the ball. We'll start with the quarterback, Jacoby Brissett. We're not going to call it a Jacoby Brissett revenge game because that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But here are the numbers. And I think if you're an optimistic Dolphin fan, I think you're looking at these numbers and maybe your mouth is watering a little bit. Over under 206.5 for Jacoby Brissett through the air, 1.5 passing touchdowns, 18.5 completions, 29.5% attempts rather, and 16.5 rushing yards. I'll say this off the bat, Dave, if he hits the under, if he goes under that number of attempts, the Dolphins are winning this game in a walk.
Yeah, and if you look at the way the Dolphins have played so far through 3 games, especially the 2 games with Jacoby under center, he's thrown 40 attempts and 49 attempts in his 2 appearances this season. Why? Well, they were down to Buffalo 96% of the offensive snaps, and they were down to the Raiders 42% of the offensive snaps. So the Dolphins have been in a position where they've had to throw first and not run the ball. That being said, the Dolphins also aren't a very good running team. They've become a pass-first team, RPO, but pass-heavy. Obviously, the way the game sets up, game flow will determine this. But Jacoby and the Dolphins have been passing the ball more than they have been running the ball. So that's simple. So I find it very hard to believe that he's going to be anywhere close to under 206 pass yards. I would play the over there. I mean, the guy he threw for 300-something yards last week. It was one of those outlier games that went to overtime. The week before, they're down 21, 28, 35, nothing. If the Dolphins are going to slug out 17-14 to win, maybe he doesn't have to do all that. But based on the way the Dolphins have been playing, and I'm a tout my column that's coming out tomorrow, Mike Clay's top 10 props of the week, that'll be out tomorrow morning on ESPN Chalk. One of his top 10 props, just read it right on air, Jacoby Brissett over 29.5 pass attempts. The numbers I just read you came from the research that Mike and I put together. That's just what they're doing. 40 and 49 snaps in terms of 40 and 49 pass attempts. They're not running the ball. They're not running it successfully. Where the Dolphins are being successful is passing it to the flat, passing it to the tight end. You've seen what Waddle, you've seen with Gesicki. Each of them had 12 and 13 catches last week for absolutely no yards. So Brissett, it's short, simple, quick passes. That's what they've been doing. Short, simple, quick passes is going to lead to over 18.5 completions, over 29.5 pass attempts. Again, one of Mike Clay's top 10 props of the week. You'll see it in the column. As far as 16.5 rush yards, all it takes is one. I mean, that's all it is. And Jacoby's not the fastest cat in the world, but he showed last week he can move if he needs to. Lean towards the over there, especially with an offensive line that is beyond bad right now. And if he has to scramble, he'll get that 16.5 just by the sure fact of, hey, getting sacked doesn't hurt your rushing numbers, but when you have to go take off, and if he has to go take off 4 or 5 times, he'll hit that 16.5. I guess really the only one that's out there that kind of is probably a perfect number is the 1.5 passing touchdowns, just because, I mean, the Dolphins don't get 2 passing touchdowns. Even last week when they had to pass the ball a lot, you still had the Malcolm Brown run. You did have the Jacoby Brissett rushing touchdown. You had the defensive touchdown. They didn't have any passing touchdowns. They had a passing 2-point conversion, so they're not necessarily completing those. I would lean towards the over, but I'm a lot more heavy on the over on the yards, attempts, completions, and rush yards with Jacoby, just because until the Dolphins decide that they can run the ball between the tackles with Gadsden and Brown, when they can't do that, which was a concern we all had in the offseason when they didn't go get Najee Harris, who, oh, by the way, was spectacular last week. That being said, the Dolphins have determined that that's not the team they're going to be, and if that's the case, I'm going to play over 29.5 pass attempts.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with the Dolphins, because I think they've played. It's not that they're not a good running team, because they're actually having success running the ball. They're just not doing it. They're just not doing it very much at all. And an interesting thing to keep in mind here as we take a look at Jacoby Brissett's props for this week is the fact that we got news today that Michael Dieter is going on IR for at least the next 3 weeks. Michael Dieter is going to be out of action, and Michael Dieter has been the standout on the Dolphins offensive line thus far this season. Now, of course, that's not really saying a whole lot given the performance of this offensive line as a unit. However, if you're looking at this situation where Dieter is going out and Greg Manns is coming in to take over as the center until Dieter is back, and we don't know anything at this point about how long Dieter is going to be out. If there is any kind of significant drop-off in play from Dieter to Manns, I mean, it's a 5-alarm fire for the Miami Dolphins on offensive line.
Yeah,
so
I fully expected my phone in the ring to ask me to go suit up and play offensive line, but I think Chris Greer saw that, my size is not indicative of offensive line, but they'll take anybody in the stands to go play this week.
That's right. Listen, and you're unavailable to play offensive line because I'm third-string quarterback for the Colts this week. So
exactly.
And listen, Dolphin fans, hope that I get into the game. I'm going to Nancy Kerrigan, Jacob Eason, and Carson Wentz. Everybody has 2 sprained ankles on that team, baby. Let's go to Myles Gaskin. Over under 3.5 receptions, 21.5 receiving yards, 12.5 rushing attempts, and 51.5 rushing yards. I tell you what, I mean, particularly on the rushing side, I'm leaning under there just based on what the Dolphins have done thus far this season on both of those numbers. But on the receiving end, I'm a little bit more bullish on what Gaskin might be expected to do on Sunday.
I would agree. And if you go back to when he returned from his COVID break last year, the last 4 games of the season, plus the first couple this year, he's averaging 4.5 receptions per game. He easily would have hit that mark last week if Jacoby could have, dumped it off a little bit better. We saw the miss in overtime that could have been a game-winning play. I fully expect with an offensive line that's as bad as it's been that Jacoby's going to have to dump off. So I'm going to take Gaskin. I see this as a game where Gaskin can probably get 5 or 6 catches, probably 30 or 40 receiving yards. As far as rushing, until the Dolphins can prove that they're going to commit to the run, it's going to be hard for me to take overs in rushing. He may hit that number of attempts if they're winning the game. As far as 51, 52 yards, shouldn't seem like a lot, but he's also not getting every carry. Malcolm Brown gets mixed in there. So I'm going to be conservatively play the under there, probably stay away from it. But of all those numbers, over 3.5 catches is the one I like the most, just because I sat there in the end zone last week and watched how many times Myles Gaskin went out there and was wide open and Jacoby just couldn't hit him, see him, whatever. I expect him to get 5 or 6 catches this week.
Yeah, agree. All right, let's take a look at the receivers, and then we'll go to this week's picks. Here they are. Devontae Parker, over under 3.5 receptions, 40.5 yards. Jalen Waddle, 3.5 receptions, 45.5 receiving yards. How are you feeling about this? Look, Jalen Waddle hit the over last week. I think Parker hit the over as well. But Waddle's average depth of target of 4.4 yards or whatever it is certainly not what you imagined when the Dolphins drafted Jalen Waddle out of the University of Alabama, number 6 overall in the draft.
No, and that's not exactly how they expected to use him, but another prop that will be in Mike Clay's column tomorrow. I told you there's only 10 of them. One of them was Brissett, and the other one is Jalen Waddle over 3.5 catches. The guy was targeted 13 times last week, 12 catches. The 4.2 average depth of target lends itself to quick, snappy catches. He's someone that Jacoby Brissett is going to often, especially last week. Week 1 he turned in 6 targets, 4 catches on 6 targets. Week 2 it was 6 receptions on 7 targets, and then last week 12 receptions on 13 targets. Anytime you see the numbers 12 receptions on 13 targets, you almost got to think 3.5 is a very low number. Now he's not going to repeat 12 receptions. If Jalen Waddle gets 12 receptions for 60 yards, it means the Dolphins are in trouble. But I do expect a game where he gets 6 or 7 catches on probably 8 or 9 targets. Maybe they actually go down, that thing called downfield, gets 70 or 80 yards. So I'll be playing the over in Jalen Waddle. I think Jacoby has found something in him, likes to play it safe and send it to him in 3 and 4 yard slants. Maybe it'll open it up just a little bit. You saw him attempt it with Will Fuller last week, obviously unsuccessful, and it's hard to catch a winning touchdown when the guy's draped all over your back in a non-pass interference call. But I do like the overs in Waddle. And as with Parker's always about whether he stays healthy and on the field. He limped off 2 or 3 times last week. I think he can get 4 catches. I would probably play that one before I played the receiving yards.
Excellent. Well, let's take a look at the game by game for this upcoming week. Your pick 6 of the week. Well, first, actually, let's reflect on last week. Rough week for you last week. You struggled. 6-0. What's the opposite of the golden sombrero? I mean,
the casinos are a little mad at me this week. I'm surprised they're not, demanding I come back and give them their money back. It was a good one. It was funny because I'm in the hotel room and I'm like, I got to do this video. My cousin's like, what? I go, just hold my phone, hit record, no longer than a minute. Let's go. And then I spit out the games and the games that were in the column. So it's not like I made them up. They were in the ESPN chalk column. And then boom, 6-0. And I actually did more than that when you add the props, the parlays. Anytime you go 6-0, you're hitting parlays and teasers if you're going 6-0. So I actually added a 7th game earlier that morning. I took the Saints Patriots under, which there's a theme to that coming with one of my picks coming up. But the Saints Patriots under wound up hitting me 7-0 in the games that I took against the spread last week.
Well, let's go see how you do this week. We'll start with game number 1, and it is the New Orleans Saints. You like them -7 at home against the Giants. Over-under on this one, 42.
I got it at 43.5, and I'll tell you, last week I was under 43 on Saints Patriots. I just mentioned that was the 7th game I took. When I saw it at 43.5, I said, well, if I'm going to take Saints Patriots under 43, when the Patriots are at home and Mac Jones handed up 7 points just like it was free cookies out there, and they still didn't hit the number. Now you have arguably a worse offense than the Giants on the road. Saints, same team, not exactly a team you want to lay 7.5 with. In terms of Jameis Winston, he's never been a favorite this big. Laying a touchdown with him is just bad for business. Taking anything New York Giants related is bad for business. But for the same number, if not more, again, I got it at 43.5. Same number as last week when the Saints couldn't score and the Patriots couldn't score. You actually have some decent defenses here. And oh, by the way, just to throw it out there, if you go back to the beginning of last season, Giants 14-4-1 to the under, most of any unders in football. Yeah, their offense stinks and their defense is a little bit underrated. And they didn't go under versus the Washington football game on Thursday night 2 weeks ago. But then you saw what they did last week against, that tough Falcons defense that any of us can score on. So I don't expect much out of the Giants. And even since I've made the pick, Shepard's out. A couple of other receivers are out for the Giants.
Clayton is out.
Slayton's out. Shepard's out. They're down to, Tony from Florida, who hasn't played much. So I don't expect much of the Giants at all. Saints haven't exactly been an offensive juggernaut. What they did in week 1 against Green Bay was because of turnovers and short fields. Neither team's going to score much. I see this being about a 24-13 game. So I'm going to play the under again in the Saints this week.
Yeah, listen, nobody cares about my fantasy football team, but I'm in one 8-team fantasy league where I had the number 1 overall pick. And so my number 1 overall pick is on the shelf for a little while, but it's also the only league where I have any shares of Saquon Barkley, who dropped to me at 16. So I took him in that draft, which is a great spot to have him. And so I need him to kind of put the Giants on his back this week and get me some points over there on the road against the Saints. Not holding my breath, though. Let's go to a classic NFC North matchup. Oh, look at this. What a juicy affair between Jared Goff and quarterback to be named later. The Detroit Lions head to Soldier Field to take on the Chicago Bears. Bears -3 in this one and over under of 41. Dave, what are you seeing here?
It's a Norris division battle between the Bears and the Lions here.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Field. Look at the Chris Bearman impression. We got it, baby.
I tell you what, I have faded the Bears legitimately in all 3 games this season. I'm 2-0-1. I got a lucky backdoor cover by the Bengals because the Bears are the Bears and they gave up the ball twice in the last 5 minutes of the game, and I got a backdoor push by the Bengals. But everybody was screaming for Justin Fields. I told you on this show 2 weeks ago, as long as Matt Nagy is going to die on the Andy Dalton hill, I'm going to keep fading the Bears. Well, Andy Dalton gets hurt, and in comes the savior, Justin Fields, which ended up with 6 for 20, 68 yards, 9 sacks, and it felt like about 72 sacks. One of Mike Clay's big props last week, over 4.5 sacks in the Bears-Browns game. That hit the over before I left to go for the stadium, so that was a good one right there.
Myles Garrett hit the over by himself.
All by himself. So you have a Bears team that is garbage. They're bad. Justin Fields not ready. Now you know why Matt Nagy, known for a quarterback whisperer, wasn't ready to go with him. They had 47 total yards last week. 47. That's it.
Is that bad?
I mean, 1 yard passing.
Is that bad?
Both are bad. So that's the Bears. That is the Bears. And they're laying 3 points. I'm not sure I would lay 3 points with the Bears against my son's flag football team that is 2-0 hitting the field tomorrow, the White Knights versus the Black Knights tomorrow. So now you have the Bears. Look at the other side. You have the snake-bitten Lions, and they're the Lions. They're 0-3 because that's what Detroit Lions do. But look a little deeper. They covered versus the Niners with a really good offensive showing in the second half after getting blown out in the first half. They had Green Bay down at the half in Lambeau on Monday Night Football before giving up more points and yards in the second half to Aaron Rodgers decided the season was going to start after 6 quarters. And for all intents and purposes, they beat the Baltimore Ravens last week. Now, it's not going to show up in the record. They are 0-3. But when you delay a game that the NFL decided not to call and a 66-yard field goal, which has never happened before, if that's what's going to take, the Detroit Lions are better than we think they are. I was tempted to take the under 42.
That is quite a statement. That is
because
quite
of
a
how
statement.
Bad the Bears are, but the Lions defense is garbage as well, so I don't really know what to expect in the total. What I do know is I'm not laying 3 with the Bears. I'm going to take the 3 with the Detroit Lions, and I'm also going to play the Lions in some money line parlays because I honestly think this is the week the Lions actually get that first W for their new head coach, and they deserve one by now. And normally you don't say that. The Lions are the Lions. The 0-16 Lions, the team that hasn't won a playoff game since your dad was born. but they're better than the Chicago Bears. And basically, this point spread is telling you they're even. I think they're better. I think they're not scared of the Bears. And unless Matt Nagy has something in his bag of tricks, they're bad. They're really bad.
Is Dan Campbell a better head coach than Matt Nagy? Am I a better head coach than Matt Nagy?
I'm sure Matt Nagy is a better head coach than Matt Nagy is showing. But
that's a good diplomatic answer there.
I don't know how he still has a job. And at the end of the day, it's hard to give up on a coach when you get him that quarterback that he's wanted. So you got rid of Trubisky and you go and get him Justin Fields. You got to give him a little time. I don't know. I don't see
okay, well, I will refrain from commenting further until a couple weeks down the line and see how he handles this Justin Fields situation, because whoo boy, that was bad last week. All right, Pittsburgh is at Green Bay. This would, in maybe other circumstances, be a really exciting game, but given the state of Big Ben and the Pittsburgh Steelers thus far, Green Bay 6.5-point favorites at home. I think that's like a really, I don't know. I feel like I'm all over the Packers in this one.
I mean, what is awesome about the National Football League, and we say this every single week, we say this every single year. You remember after week 1, Pittsburgh beat Buffalo and shut them down. In Buffalo, shut them down. Green Bay didn't show up against the Saints. Yeah, and you're like, wow, maybe the Packers aren't the Super Bowl contending team we all thought they were, and maybe the Steelers are Super Bowl contenders when we thought they weren't. Forget about week 1. Since then, the Steelers have lost to the Raiders at home.
Yep.
And got embarrassed by the Browns at home. The Packers decided to wake up at halftime and destroyed the Lions, and then they went in and pretty much dominated San Francisco before that game came back around and eventually ended at the end. But Green Bay dominated that first half, and it should have been bigger. This is a mismatch. I mean, Big Ben's not healthy. None of his receivers are healthy. They can't just run Najee Harris 47 times and give him 10 catches. That's not the recipe to beat the Green Bay Packers. I also think their defense isn't as good as we saw week 1. Josh Allen and the Bills, maybe it was a little cobwebs out of the first game of the season. The key to betting the NFL is to forget what you saw week 1. And if we forget what we see week 1 and we see what we saw in weeks 2 and 3, although I would tell you the key to betting the NFL is to forget what you saw 5 minutes ago. Right. But if you look at weeks 2 and 3 of the NFL season and throw out week 1, this should be a double-digit spread. But it's Pittsburgh. It's Big Ben. I personally, in my power rankings, have Green Bay about 9 points better than Pittsburgh. I'm also the one who picked the Packers to win the NFC and looked like crap after 1 week. I still think the Packers win the NFC, but they have a lot of good teams to compete with in terms of the Rams, the Cardinals, the Bucks, of course. So we'll see what happens there, the Saints, but I do like the Packers minus 6.5, and I would lay up to 8 or 9 in this game if you can find a good alternate line somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, the NFL is a league where people overreact to small sample sizes more than anything else. And I mean, at this point, after 3 weeks, the sample size is indicating something very different than what it was indicating after 1 week, is all I'll say about these two teams. All right. The narratives are strong in this one. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady, unlikely Rob Gronkowski, but Tom Brady is the big story here. Tom Brady and former New England Patriot Antonio Brown head into Foxborough to take on the Patriots. And again, talking about sample size, the Buccaneers look very, very strong, even though they fell in Los Angeles last week to the Rams. They're looking very strong. New England, it's a bit of a mess right now, but I mean, it's been a bit of a mess for the last couple of years with the Patriots, quite frankly. And, there was an argument being made that is it Tom Brady or Bill Belichick that the success in New England is due to? And, the best thing that I heard was something that I heard recently was that Belichick was responsible for the success early on, and then Tom Brady was responsible for the success at the tail end of the Patriots dynasty. Either way, now you've got Tom Brady, who won the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, and Bill Belichick, who's just been mired in mediocrity since Tom Brady left Foxborough. And we got a big reunion of sorts on Sunday night coming up. So, Dave, what do you like here?
So you're saying Tom Brady's returning to New England? I hadn't heard. Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah, listen, it's pretty underground news at this sort. It's not in the mainstream publications. It's not on the mainstream media. You got to do your own research to find out about this stuff.
So in sports betting, there are some people who like narratives, revenge games, return games, chip on shoulder games. There are some people who believe in stats. It's the numbers, it's the stats, it's give me the databases. I'm more of a stats guy than a narrative guy. That doesn't mean I'll not tune into a narrative from time to time. This one is both, because statistically speaking, the Bucs are way better than the Patriots. As for the narrative, Brady's returning, Gronk's returning, AB's returning, Brady, Belichick. And listen, my network, I work for ESPN. They talk about this every single day for the last 18 months. Brady versus Belichick, who's more responsible? Throw it out. I don't care. They both won 6 Super Bowls together. Oh, well, Brady won last year. Belichick didn't. You know what? Brady went to a team ready to win. Once he left, Belichick had a team that wasn't ready to win. You really can't. It's not apples to apples. They're both responsible for what was the best dynasty in the history of the National Football League. 20 years, sustained winning, a million different records set, division titles, 6 Super Bowls. Could have won 3 more easily. Give them both the credit. They'll hug at midfield before and after the game. As for the game itself, if anybody's watched the New England Patriots the last couple of weeks, they're not a very good football team. They lost to the Dolphins. They got crushed last week by the Saints at home. And in between, they beat a team that all of us could beat in the New York Jets. So as far as Tampa's concerned, you're not going to see them lose too many games. The last thing New England needed ahead of this primetime game is Tampa off a loss. As far as narratives are concerned, Tom Brady's going to throw the ball until his arm falls off. And as we know, his arm will never fall off because he has a bionic arm. Whatever he was born with or whatever surgeon did something to it, it's going to last until he's 150 years old and be throwing passes until we're all long gone. Tampa's the better team. Tampa wins this game. I don't necessarily think it's close, but all primetime games so far have been close, great games. There'll be a certain atmosphere in New England. But at the end of the day, you can have all the pomp and circumstance. You can have all the atmosphere of all the fireworks, primetime, New England, Foxborough. At the end of the day, number 12 is on that side of the field. And as long as number 12 is on that side of the field with AB and Gronk and Evans and their, Fournette and all of their weapons, they're a much better football team. And that's what some people forget when they talk about revenge games or homecoming games or whiteout, blackout, whatever the fans do in the stands in terms of the shirts and all that stuff. These are professional football players, and one team is far superior to the other. Number 12 is on that side. Defending Super Bowl champs are a better team, and unless they turn the ball over early and all of a sudden the Patriots get some momentum, a Patriots team that looked like absolute dog crap versus the Saints, this is a much better team than the New Orleans Saints coming in here. And I don't think it's close. I'm looking at about a 31-10 game. It'll be fun. Get the popcorn out. But once the teams actually take the field, it's not like Tom Brady's never been in the stadium before. It's not like he's never seen this team before. Like, there's no rivalry here. It's Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay.
It's a home game. It's a home game for Tom Brady.
So this line has not moved off at 6.5 or 7, despite 97% of the money coming in on Tampa, which scares me. But again, a lot of people understand at the end of the day, they're the better football team. Now, of course, New England can win the game. It's NFL. Anybody can win any game. Right. By the sure numbers and eye test, I've watched every play of all of their games. Tampa is a 2 touchdown better than New England. And this game, this spread should be higher than it is.
Well, I like it at 7. Can I throw a prop at you for this game?
Over Tom Brady.
So, I would figure over, but here's the prop. So Tom Brady's 68 yards away from breaking Drew Brees' all-time passing yardage mark. And there are bets out there on who is favored to be the guy who catches the pass that breaks the record. The favorite as of this afternoon was Gronk at plus 150, but now Gronk is listed as doubtful for this game and is probably not going to play. So you've got Chris Godwin plus 350, Mike Evans plus 450, Antonio Brown plus 750, Leonard Fournette plus 1,200, and you've also got Tom Brady himself at plus 10,000. I don't see a number for Cameron Brate because I think that would be an interesting play, particularly with Gronk out. But do you have somebody you like there, or is it just a total crapshoot for you?
Can I change the prop on you?
Okay, let's do it.
Well, what you just asked is a total crapshoot. It's whoever Tom decides in the huddle he wants to throw it to. There's really no skill in picking it. Anybody who thinks they can go find value in a play of who Tom's going to throw to break the record when you don't know what play is going to break the record is lying to you. It's literally a crapshoot. There's no skill involved there. However, he's 68 yards away, and there is props out there as to which quarter he will throw it in. The first quarter is minus 240. I like it. It's 240. He's going to throw for more than 68 yards probably on the first possession of the game.
First drive, right, exactly.
I would lay the number unless the Patriots get the ball first, keep it for like 7 minutes, and the Bucks go 3 and out, and the Patriots keep it again. I see him break it in the first quarter. And we all know if the Patriots win the coin toss, they defer all the time. So expect the Bucks to get the ball first, 68 yards, first quarter, minus 240. That would be the prop I would take in that one.
Yeah, easy peasy. Easy peasy.
It would be awesome if you bet on Tom Brady to throw the completion to himself and run for 68 yards. That would be fantastic.
Well, I mean, he doesn't need to run for 68 yards. He just needs to. I mean, the fact of the matter is, unless he's 1 yard away, ain't no way Brady's getting a pass back. First of all, Brady's not getting a pass knocked back down into his face such that he's making the catch. Brady is a throw it down kind of guy.
Maybe he'll just throw it to himself.
Exactly. I think they call that traveling. Let's go take a look. The Las Vegas Raiders travel to LA to take on the Chargers. A big clash at the top of the AFC West here as the Raiders, the 3-0 Raiders, take on the Bolts. Bolts -3 at home. Over under on this one, 52. People expecting a shootout.
There comes a time in everyone's life where you just have to buck up and fade the 3-0 team. The Raiders are 3-0, make no bones about it. They upset Baltimore on Monday night at home. They went in and crushed Pittsburgh, and then they slapped their way to a win against the Dolphins. As much as everybody wants to believe that the Vegas Raiders and Chucky and Gruden are good, they're not. They're not. And David Carr is playing above his skis. They're missing Josh Jacobs. The defense is garbage. Allowed the Dolphins right back in the game.
Did you say David Carr?
Derek Carr, David Carr, they're related. Derek Carr. I'm dating myself with David Carr.
I mean,
the Chargers.
I'm not going to hold it against you.
The Chargers are a very good football team. They went into Kansas City last week and put a hurting on the two-time defending AFC champs. They're the better team. They're at home in their new stadium Monday night. I like the Chargers here. It'll be a good game. The primetime games are always tight. The Raiders seem to be hanging around. I just think the Chargers are better. This line tells you that it's, sort of an even matchup. And at the end of the year, when all 17 games are done and played, the Chargers will have a better record than the Raiders. And I think it starts right here. Coming off that win against Kansas City, they're playing arguably a lesser team in the Raiders. And I see the AFC West sort of figuring itself out. And the Chargers getting a big win here against the Raiders. You're not going to lose to the Raiders on Monday Night Football with the division. Pretty much, you lose this, you're 2-2, and the Raiders are somehow 4-0. And then you egg on our face and we start talking about John Gruden as coach of the year. I don't see it. The Raiders should have lost 2 of their first 3 games. And here they are, only getting 3 points against the Chargers. I think the Chargers are the superior team and we'll get it done.
Yeah. And, I just want to say that I'm really disappointed that won't get to listen to Eli and Peyton break down Derek Carr versus Justin Herbert. It's really too bad.
The contract was for 10 games, so you'll get 7 more. It just won't be this week.
Yeah, listen, and you don't want to subject those poor guys to Derek Carr again. All right, let's take it home. Final game of the week. Let's talk it. Indianapolis at Miami. Dolphins, this was this afternoon, -2. I think the line is now -2.5. Dolphins at home, so it's a pretty even matchup here. Over under 41.5. Boy, what do you think? What do you think? If my score prediction for this one holds up, I'm saying smash the under. But
the good news about betting on sports is you can pass whenever the heck you want to pass. Personally, I'm passing on this game. We are on a show. You do want me to make a pick. Make a pick. I've been thinking about this all day. I don't know what to do here.
This is good. This is good. This is great television.
I would lean Dolphins in the under. I see this being about a 17-14 game. That being said, what I saw in the fourth quarter last week against the Raiders makes me think we have some offense. The Colts have shown me absolutely nothing. Very disappointed. You mentioned off air, every team gets right against Miami. Maybe they get right. I think if the Dolphins play the game they need to play, that they will beat the Colts. I don't see either team being able to score, quite frankly. So of the two, I would take the under, even though I hate taking under 41.5. That's a small number, but outside of a fourth quarter and a couple of gift touchdowns in that game, the Dolphins, they lost 35-0 to Buffalo. That was an under. Neither team scored in the New England game. That was an under. And I know the fourth quarter is the fourth quarter, but that game was on pace to go way under the total, and that included the Dolphins getting 14 free points early. So the Dolphins offense screams under. The Colts injuries scream under. So I've talked myself into 41.5 under.
There it is. There it is. And that is Pick Six with David Bearman for week 4. So hopefully everything goes according to plan this week, and we come back and David's just riding a 12-game win streak into week 5, and and the Dolphins will take on the NFL's all-time leading passer, Tom Brady. But that's next week. First, they got to take on the Colts. And it's a big game for the Dolphins, because if they get a big win there, get themselves up to 500, basically playing with house money in this game against Tampa anyway, that nobody expects them to win. So, it'll be a good chance for them to sort of reset and get back on track, hopefully, this season. So
maybe the GOAT coach comes up with the ultimate game plan and totally shuts down his boy Brady, and Brady can walk into Joe Robbie Stadium and set the. No, it's not going to happen.
No, it could also, because I think the game is in Tampa.
You know what I mean.
So, but hey, it'd be a good thing for the Dolphins if Brady showed up at Hard Rock Stadium.
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
I'm just saying.
Made the wrong turn on I-75. We're all good.
Yeah, he ended up stuck somewhere in Alligator Alley. He's just out of. Who are we kidding? Brady's not driving from Tampa to Miami Gardens. It's not happening. It's not happening. He's in the helicopter. He's in the Learjet. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of Pick Six. David, tell people where they can find you, what you're up to, what's going on.
Sure. D Bearman ESPN. That's at D Bearman ESPN is my Twitter handle. You'll see all of our ESPN Chalk content either sent out through my Twitter handle or go to ESPN.com/chalk. Up there right now is our NFL picks. You just saw a couple of mine. Our great staple of 9 different writers, including myself, have picks on all 16 games in there, or 14 Sunday games, since we had our Thursday one yesterday. We'll have our Monday one on Sunday, as well as Nuggets. You want a full page of Nuggets on NFL games, or if college football is your baby, we have our Stanford Stephen the Bear picks, college football best bets picks, as well as Nuggets files on there. And hey, if you want to watch the MMA, we got that there as well. So ESPN Chalk, your home to all betting content, or just follow me on Twitter at DBearmanESPN.
There it is. And I am, of course, at Amplified to Rock, and all kinds of great content coming your way on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. So if you haven't already, we invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on notifications so you know when we go live, so you never miss an episode of Pick Six or the Same Old Dolphin Show or Countdown to Kickoff or the DolphinsTalk.com daily podcast. All of that is over there at the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. And make sure you're visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. It is your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins. And you don't want to miss out on all of the upcoming news and information, as well as opinions, columns, podcasts, all the good stuff over there at DolphinsTalk.com. That's going to be it for us on Pick Six. Enjoy your weekend of football. Enjoy your time with your family and your friends. And we will catch you back here on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel next weekend. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.